Right now, 73% of professionals will end their workday feeling the same frustrating contradiction. They were busy, exhausted even, but when they look back at what they actually accomplished, the list is painfully short. Stanford's organizational behavior research found something that shattered decades of productivity advice. The most productive people in any organization do not work harder than everyone else. They do not wake up more motivated. They have simply installed invisible systems that multiply every hour they invest. And here is the part that changes everything. Motivation, that feeling you have been chasing, waiting for, and blaming yourself for lacking, is the single biggest productivity lie ever told. You are listening to this because you want more. More output, more control, more results without the constant stress of falling behind. And you have probably tried before. You downloaded the apps. You made the lists. Maybe you even woke up at 5 in the morning for a few painful weeks. But eventually, it all collapsed. Not because you were lazy, not because you lacked discipline. It collapsed because you were building on the wrong foundation. For the next several chapters, you are going to discover something that the top 1% of performers understand but rarely talk about. You are going to learn a 12-point system that works whether you feel like it or not. A system designed for chaotic schedules, constant interruptions, and the reality of modern work. This is not hustle culture. This is not about grinding harder. This is about installing leverage into your life and career so that every action you take compounds instead of evaporates. But first, we need to destroy the myth that has been holding you back. Here is what nobody tells you about motivation. It is a lagging indicator, not a leading one. McKinsey's research on executive performance tracked over 2,000 high-performing leaders across 47 countries. What they found contradicts almost everything popular productivity advice teaches. The leaders who sustained exceptional output over 5 years or more did not report higher levels of motivation than their peers. They reported higher levels of systematization. They had routines that removed the need for motivation. They had decision frameworks that eliminated willpower drain. They had boundaries that protected their energy without requiring constant enforcement. In other words, they stopped trying to feel productive. They simply became productive by design. Think about this for a moment. When you brush your teeth in the morning, do you need motivation? Do you have an internal debate about whether you feel like doing it today? Of course not. The behavior is automatic. It is systematic. It happens because the system is installed, not because you wake up inspired to practice dental hygiene. Now imagine if your most important work operated the same way. Imagine if your ability to focus, prioritize, and execute was not dependent on how you felt when you woke up. That is exactly what the 12 productivity levers will create for you. Let me show you the difference this makes in real terms. The average professional starts their day by checking email. They react to whatever seems urgent. They attend meetings that appear on their calendar without questioning whether those meetings serve their actual goals. They keep a to-do list that grows longer each day because they add tasks faster than they complete them. When an important project needs deep focus, they try to squeeze it between interruptions. They multitask because they believe it makes them efficient, even though every neuroscience study for the past 20 years has proven the opposite. And at the end of the day, they feel busy but somehow behind. Sound familiar? Now consider how elite performers operate. They do not check email first thing. They protect their first hours for high-value work because they understand that cognitive capacity is a finite resource that depletes throughout the day. They do not attend meetings by default. Every meeting must pass a simple filter. Does this require synchronous discussion, or could it be an email? They do not keep endless to-do lists. They identify 3 priorities each day and ruthlessly protect time to complete them. They do not multitask. They batch similar activities and create boundaries between focused work and communication. And at the end of the day, they know exactly what they accomplished because they designed their day instead of reacting to it. This is not about working more hours. The research is clear on this. Harvard Business School's study on professional productivity found that after 50 hours per week, output per hour drops so dramatically that there is virtually no difference in total output between someone working 55 hours and someone working 70. You cannot outwork a broken system. You can only build a better one. Here is your first practical insight, and I want you to actually implement this before you finish listening today. Tomorrow morning, before you check any messages, write down the 3 things that would make tomorrow a successful day. Not 10 things. Not a comprehensive list. 3 outcomes that matter. Then protect 90 minutes, one uninterrupted block, to work on the most important of those 3. No email, no Slack, no quick questions from colleagues. 90 minutes of focused execution on what actually moves the needle. This single practice, which takes less than 5 minutes to plan and 90 minutes to execute, will produce more meaningful output than most people generate in an entire scattered workday. That is not an exaggeration. Cal Newport's research on knowledge worker productivity found that the average professional gets only about 2.5 hours of actual productive work done per day. The rest is consumed by context switching, shallow tasks, and the recovery time needed after each interruption. 2.5 hours. If you protect 90 focused minutes each morning, you are already outperforming most of your peers before lunch. But here is the catch. Knowing this is not enough. You have probably heard advice like this before. The difference between knowing and doing is not motivation. It is systems. And that is exactly what the rest of this book will give you. Let me explain why willpower fails and systems succeed. Your brain has a limited supply of what researchers call executive function. This is your capacity to make decisions, resist impulses, and stay focused on difficult tasks. Every decision you make throughout the day, no matter how small, draws from this same limited pool. What to wear, what to eat for breakfast, how to respond to that email, whether to attend that meeting. By the time you sit down to do important work, you have already depleted a significant portion of your cognitive resources on things that did not matter. This is why the most productive people do not rely on making good decisions in the moment. They make good decisions once, then systematize them. They wear the same type of clothes, so they do not waste mental energy on wardrobe choices. They eat similar meals, so they do not drain willpower before their real work begins. They have rules for meetings, rules for email, rules for how they allocate their time. Not because they lack flexibility, but because they understand that every decision automated is cognitive capacity preserved for what actually matters. Average performers make decisions all day. Elite performers make systems and let the systems make the decisions. Now, you might be thinking that this sounds rigid, restrictive, maybe even boring. But consider this. When you do not have systems, what actually happens? You spend mental energy deciding the same things over and over. You feel constant low-level stress because nothing is automatic. You rely on willpower, which means your productivity fluctuates wildly based on sleep, mood, and circumstances. You finish each day wondering where the time went. That is not freedom. That is chaos disguised as flexibility. True freedom comes from constraints that serve you. A chess master is not limited by the rules of chess. The rules create the structure within which mastery becomes possible. The 12 levers you are about to learn are your rules, your structure, the framework within which you can finally perform at your actual potential. Here is what I need you to understand before we go further. This is not about becoming a robot. This is not about squeezing every minute for maximum output until you burn out. The goal is sustainability. The goal is building a professional life where you accomplish more than you thought possible while actually working fewer reactive hours. Where you have energy left at the end of the day for the people and activities that matter outside of work. Where you go to bed knowing tomorrow is handled because your system handles it. The 12 levers we will explore cover every dimension of sustainable productivity. Clarity, so you always know what actually matters. Planning, so each day has structure without rigidity. Focus, so you can do deep work in a distracted world. Energy, so you work with your biology instead of against it. Leverage, so you multiply your output through delegation and systems. And rhythm, so everything becomes repeatable instead of requiring constant reinvention. Some of these levers will be familiar concepts. Others will challenge assumptions you did not know you had. But all of them are designed to work together. A productivity system is not a collection of tips. It is an integrated framework where each element reinforces the others. Skip one lever, and the whole system becomes less effective. Install all 12, and you create something most professionals never experience: calm, consistent, high-output performance that does not require heroic effort. In the next chapter, we will map out the complete 12-lever system. You will see how each piece connects. You will understand why most productivity advice fails because it addresses symptoms instead of systems. And you will have a clear roadmap for the transformation ahead. But before we move on, let me leave you with this. The reason you have struggled with productivity is not that something is wrong with you. It is that something is wrong with the approach. Motivation is not the answer. Systems are. And you are about to learn exactly which systems to build. The question is not whether this will work. The research is clear. The question is whether you will actually implement what you learn. That choice, right now, is the only thing motivation is good for. Deciding to start. After that, the system takes over. Welcome to the 12-point guide. Your chaos is about to become clarity. Chapter TWO: The 12 Productivity Levers. Google spent 2 years and millions of dollars trying to answer one question: what makes some teams dramatically more productive than others? They called it Project Aristotle, and the findings shocked even their own researchers. The difference was not talent. It was not resources. It was not even intelligence. The highest performing teams had installed specific operating systems, invisible structures that made excellence repeatable. What you are about to learn is the individual version of that discovery. 12 levers that, when installed correctly, transform scattered effort into compounding results. These are not tips. They are not hacks. They are the architectural blueprint for how elite performers actually operate. Here is why most productivity advice fails. It treats symptoms instead of systems. You feel overwhelmed, so someone tells you to make a to-do list. But the to-do list grows faster than you can complete it because nobody addressed why you are overwhelmed in the first place. You struggle to focus, so someone recommends a focus app. But the app cannot solve the underlying problem that your environment, your schedule, and your communication habits are designed for distraction. You want more output, so someone tells you to wake up earlier. But adding hours to a broken system just gives you more hours of broken output. The 12 levers work differently. Each one addresses a root cause, not a symptom. And more importantly, they work together. Installing one lever makes the others more effective. Skip one, and you create a gap that undermines the whole system. This is integrated architecture, not a buffet where you pick what sounds appealing. Let me walk you through the complete framework before we deep dive into each component. The first 3 levers create your foundation. These are about clarity, knowing exactly what matters and why. Lever 1 is your vision anchor. This is not vague goal setting. This is a concrete picture of what success looks like in 90 days, tied to specific outcomes you can measure. Without this anchor, you will be productive at the wrong things. Lever 2 is your weekly execution rhythm. This translates your 90-day vision into weekly priorities that actually move the needle. Most people operate day to day, constantly reacting. Elite performers operate week to week, proactively choosing where to invest their finite time. Lever 3 is your daily top 3. This is the 5-minute practice that transforms your entire day. 3 outcomes, not tasks. 3 things that, if accomplished, make today a success regardless of what else happens. The next 3 levers protect your focus. These are about depth, the ability to do concentrated work in a world designed for distraction. Lever 4 is your deep work protocol. This is a specific system for creating blocks of uninterrupted time where your most important work actually gets done. Not aspirational intentions, but concrete boundaries that you and everyone around you respects. Lever 5 is your environment design. Stanford's behavior research proved that willpower is dramatically less important than environment. This lever shows you how to architect your physical and digital spaces so that focus becomes the default and distraction requires effort. Lever 6 is your attention restoration practice. Cognitive capacity is not fixed. It depletes and recovers. This lever gives you specific techniques for restoring focus throughout the day so you can sustain high performance instead of burning out by noon. Here is something that separates average performers from elite ones. Average performers treat focus as a character trait. They believe some people can concentrate and others cannot. They blame themselves when they get distracted, as if better willpower would solve the problem. Elite performers understand that focus is a system output. Design the right inputs, protect the right boundaries, and focus emerges reliably. It has nothing to do with character. It has everything to do with architecture. The next 3 levers multiply your output. These are about leverage, getting more results from the same or less input. Lever 7 is your delegation ladder. Most professionals are terrible at delegation because they were never taught a framework. They either do everything themselves or dump tasks on others without proper setup. This lever gives you a systematic approach to identifying what should be delegated and how to delegate it so the work actually gets done. Lever 8 is your automation inventory. Every repeating task in your work is a candidate for elimination or automation. This lever helps you audit your week and identify where technology or process changes can remove work entirely. Lever 9 is your standard operating procedures. The most valuable things you do should be documented so they can be repeated without you thinking through every step every time. This lever shows you how to capture your best practices so execution becomes automatic. McKinsey's research on executive productivity found that leaders who master these leverage levers, delegation, automation, and systematization, free up an average of 12 hours per week compared to their peers. 12 hours. That is not a small optimization. That is an extra day and a half every single week to invest in high-value work instead of tasks that someone else could do or that do not need human involvement at all. The next 2 levers manage your energy. These are about sustainability, maintaining high performance over months and years instead of burning bright and flaming out. Lever 10 is your energy rhythm mapping. Your cognitive capacity fluctuates throughout the day in predictable patterns. This lever helps you identify your peak hours and protect them for your most demanding work, while batching lower-value tasks during your natural energy dips. Lever 11 is your recovery protocol. Rest is not the absence of work. It is a productivity input. This lever gives you specific practices for recovery that actually restore your capacity instead of just passing time. Here is a mistake almost everyone makes. They treat recovery as optional, something to do when all the work is finished. But the work is never finished. There is always another email, another meeting, another project on the horizon. If you wait until everything is done to recover, you will never recover. Elite performers schedule recovery the same way they schedule important meetings. It is not negotiable. It is not the first thing to cut when schedules get busy. It is protected because they understand that sustainable output requires it. The final lever ties everything together. Lever 12 is your weekly review and scoreboard. This is your control system. Without it, the other 11 levers gradually fall apart. Life gets busy. You skip your deep work block. You stop doing your daily top 3, and within a few weeks, you are back to reactive chaos. The weekly review creates accountability. It shows you what is working and what is not. It gives you a regular checkpoint to course correct before small slips become complete system collapse. Let me show you how these levers integrate. Imagine it is Monday morning. Your weekly review yesterday identified your 3 biggest priorities for the week. These came directly from your 90-day vision, so you know they actually matter. You open your calendar and see deep work blocks already scheduled, protected time for these priorities. Your phone is in another room because your environment is designed for focus. You look at your daily top 3 and see exactly what would make today successful. As you work, you are operating during your peak energy hours because you mapped your rhythm. The tasks you are not doing have been delegated using your ladder or are being handled by automation you set up last month. Your standard operating procedures mean you do not waste time reinventing processes. When you feel your attention fading, you use your restoration practice to recover. And next Sunday, you will review the whole week, score your execution, and set up the next 7 days. That is not a fantasy. That is how the system works when all 12 levers are installed. Now, here is the critical insight. You cannot install all 12 levers at once. Trying to change everything simultaneously is a recipe for changing nothing. The chapters ahead will give you each lever in sequence, designed to build on what came before. By the time you finish this book, you will have a complete operating system. but you build it one component at a time. Average performers hear about a new productivity technique and try to add it to their existing chaos. It works for a few days, then gets forgotten. Elite performers understand that sustainable change requires systematic installation. You do not just try a technique. You integrate it into your existing structure until it becomes automatic. Then you add the next one. The order we will follow is intentional. First, clarity. You cannot be productive at the wrong things. We start with knowing exactly what matters. Second, planning. You cannot execute what you have not planned. We build your daily and weekly rhythms. Third, focus. You cannot do deep work in a distracted environment. We create your protection protocols. Fourth, leverage. You cannot scale yourself without systems. We multiply your output through delegation and automation. Fifth, energy. You cannot sustain what drains you. We align your work with your biology. Sixth, rhythm. You cannot improve what you do not review. We install your weekly control system. Each section builds on the previous. Skip ahead, and you will be trying to protect focus when you do not know what to focus on. You will be delegating tasks that should not exist in the first place. You will be reviewing weeks that had no structure to begin with. I know you want results fast. Everyone does. But fast results that do not last are not actually results. They are illusions that make you feel productive while changing nothing. What we are building together is different. It is slower to install and faster to operate. It is harder to set up and easier to maintain. It is the difference between renting productivity and owning it. In the next chapter, we tackle the foundation of everything: clarity. You will learn how to translate vague goals into weekly execution without overwhelm. You will discover why 90-day visions outperform annual goals. And you will build the first piece of your new operating system. The 12 levers are mapped. The path is clear. Now we build. Chapter THRE Clarity. Goals that execute. 92% of people who set goals never achieve them. That statistic comes from a University of Scranton study that tracked New Year's resolutions across 10 years. But here is what makes that number even more disturbing. The people who failed were not lazy. They were not uncommitted. Most of them genuinely wanted their goals. They thought about them constantly. They felt guilty about not achieving them. They tried multiple times, and they still failed. The problem was not motivation or desire. The problem was that their goals were designed wrong from the beginning. You have probably set goals before. Maybe you wanted to get promoted, launch a project, improve your health, or build a new skill. And if you were like most people, you experienced the same frustrating pattern. Excitement at the start, gradual fade of momentum, complete abandonment within weeks. Then guilt, followed by another attempt months later with the same result. This cycle is so common that most people assume it is just how goals work. Set them, fail at them, try again. But that assumption is wrong. Goals do not have to work this way. The failure is not in you. It is in the goal architecture itself. Let me show you what I mean. The typical goal looks something like this. I want to get promoted this year. Or, I want to be more productive. Or, I want to grow my business. These feel like goals, but they are actually just wishes. They have no execution pathway. They provide no weekly guidance. They give you nothing to do on Tuesday afternoon when you are staring at your calendar wondering how to spend the next 2 hours. And because they provide no concrete direction, they evaporate under the pressure of daily demands. Here is the first lever in your productivity system: the 90-day vision anchor. This replaces vague annual goals with something you can actually execute. Why 90 days? Because it is the perfect balance between ambition and urgency. Annual goals feel too far away. Your brain discounts them the same way it discounts retirement savings in your 20s. There is no felt urgency, so there is no action. Weekly goals are too small. They keep you busy but do not create meaningful progress toward bigger outcomes. 90 days is close enough to feel real and far enough to accomplish something substantial. It is also short enough that you can accurately predict what is possible. Nobody knows what their life will look like in 12 months. But 90 days? You can see that clearly. The 90-day vision is not a list of tasks. It is a picture of outcomes. What will be true in 90 days that is not true today? Be specific. Not I will be more productive, but I will have a documented weekly system that I have followed for at least 10 consecutive weeks. Not I will grow my business, but I will have added 15 new clients and increased revenue by 20%. Not I will get healthier, but I will have lost 12 pounds and established a 4-day workout routine. Notice the difference. These outcomes are measurable. You will know, without any ambiguity, whether you achieve them. They are also visual. You can imagine the future state clearly. And they are meaningful. Each one represents a genuine change in your circumstances, not just activity completed. Here is your first practical tool. Take out whatever you use for notes and write down this question. What are the 3 to 5 outcomes that would make the next 90 days a massive success? Not 10 outcomes. Not everything you want to accomplish. 3 to 5 things that, if achieved, would represent genuine progress in your life or career. These become your vision anchors. Everything else in your productivity system flows from these. Now, having a 90-day vision is necessary but not sufficient. The second part of the clarity lever is translation. You need to convert that vision into weekly priorities that you can actually execute. Here is where most goal-setting systems fail completely. They help you set the goal, but abandon you when it comes to execution. You know where you want to be in 90 days, but you have no idea what to do this week. So you default to whatever feels urgent. You react to emails, attend meetings, and handle requests from other people. At the end of each week, you have been busy, but your 90-day outcomes have not moved at all. The solution is reverse engineering. Take each 90-day outcome and ask a simple question. What would have to be true at the 60-day mark for this to be on track? Then ask, what would have to be true at the 30-day mark? Now you have milestones. From these milestones, you can identify what needs to happen this week. Let me make this concrete. Suppose one of your 90-day outcomes is completing a major project at work. At the 60-day mark, you would need the first 2 phases finished and the 3rd phase started. At the 30-day mark, you would need phase 1 complete and phase 2 in progress. That means this week, you need to make specific progress on phase 1. Maybe that means completing the research, finalizing the outline, or getting stakeholder approval. These weekly actions come directly from your vision. They are not random tasks you hope will eventually lead somewhere. They are precise steps on a mapped path. Average performers set goals and then hope their daily actions somehow add up to achievement. Elite performers reverse engineer their goals into weekly priorities and then protect time to execute those priorities. The difference in outcome is not marginal. It is transformational. This brings us to the weekly priority practice. Every Sunday, or whatever day works as the end of your week, you spend 15 to 20 minutes doing one thing. You identify the 3 priorities for the upcoming week that would most move your 90-day outcomes forward. Not 3 tasks, 3 priorities. A task is something you check off. A priority is something that creates progress. Here is how to tell the difference. Answer emails is a task. It might be necessary, but it does not move any needle. Complete the client proposal draft is a priority. It directly advances a project that matters. Attend team meetings is a task. Facilitate the strategy session and leave with clear next steps is a priority. The language matters because it shapes your thinking. Tasks focus on activity. Priorities focus on outcomes. Each week, you choose 3 priorities. Write them somewhere you will see them daily. These 3 items become your North Star for the week. When you are deciding how to spend your time, you ask a simple question. Does this move one of my 3 priorities forward? If yes, do it. If no, question whether it deserves your time at all. Now, here is the part that feels uncomfortable. Choosing 3 priorities means not choosing other things. It means some tasks will not get done. Some requests will be delayed. Some opportunities will be declined. This is not a bug in the system. It is the feature. Productivity is not about doing everything. It is about doing the right things. And the right things are defined by your 90-day vision, not by whoever sent you the most recent email. Most people resist this. They want to keep all options open. They want to say yes to everything and somehow make it all fit. But this is mathematically impossible. You have a fixed number of hours. Every yes to something is a no to something else. The only question is whether you make that choice consciously or let circumstances make it for you. Average performers let their priorities be determined by whoever is loudest, whoever seems most urgent, whoever happens to send a message at the right moment. Elite performers determine their own priorities in advance and then defend them against the noise. The first approach feels easier in the moment but creates chaos over time. The second approach requires discipline in the moment but creates calm over time. Let me give you a framework for defending your weekly priorities. It is called the Priority Protection Protocol. When a new request comes in, you run it through 3 filters. First, does this align with my 90-day vision? If no, it is automatically low priority. Second, does this have to be done this week? Or does it just feel urgent? Most urgent things are not actually time-sensitive when you examine them carefully. Third, am I the only person who can do this? If someone else could handle it, delegation becomes an option we will cover in a later chapter. Most requests fail at least one of these filters. That does not mean you refuse them. It means you schedule them appropriately. Things that align with your vision and are truly time-sensitive get protected time this week. Things that do not align or are not truly urgent get pushed to later or delegated entirely. This is not about being unhelpful. It is about being strategic with your limited capacity. Here is what happens when you implement this system. Your weeks stop feeling random. You know exactly what success looks like before Monday morning arrives. You have clear criteria for evaluating requests instead of reacting emotionally to every demand. And most importantly, your daily actions compound toward meaningful outcomes instead of evaporating into busyness. The clarity lever is now installed. You have a 90-day vision with specific outcomes. You have milestones at 30 and 60 days. You have a weekly priority practice that translates vision into action. And you have a protection protocol for defending your priorities against noise. But there is one more piece missing. You know what to prioritize each week. Now you need a system for prioritizing each day. That is where the 5-minute daily plan comes in. In the next chapter, you will learn a practice that takes less time than your morning coffee, but transforms your entire workday. You will discover why time boxing beats to-do lists. And you will install the habit that makes daily execution automatic. Your vision is set. Your weeks are structured. Now we make each day count. Chapter 4. The 5-minute daily plan. The most productive executives in the world spend less time planning their days than you spend waiting for your coffee to brew. That sounds wrong. We assume that complex schedules require complex planning. We imagine high performers hunched over elaborate systems, mapping every minute with military precision. But research from Drexel University's business school found the opposite. The highest output professionals used planning systems that took 5 minutes or less. The difference was not how long they planned. It was what they planned for. Here is the paradox that changes everything. To-do lists, the tool that 90% of professionals rely on, actually decrease productivity for most people. A study published in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology tracked task completion across different planning methods. People who used traditional to-do lists completed fewer important tasks than people who used time-based planning. The to-do list group felt busier. They checked off more items. But the items they completed were smaller, easier, and less meaningful. They were productive at being unproductive. Why does this happen? Because to-do lists are fundamentally dishonest about time. They create an illusion that everything can get done. You add tasks without considering how long each one takes. The list grows to 15, 20, 30 items. You look at it and feel motivated. So much to accomplish. But there are only so many hours. The math does not work. By midday, you realize you will never finish. Anxiety spikes. You start rushing through easy tasks to feel progress. The important things that require deep thought get pushed to tomorrow. And tomorrow, the cycle repeats. The 5-minute daily plan solves this by forcing honesty. It makes you confront the reality of time before your day begins. Here is the complete system. Every morning, before you do anything else, you answer 3 questions. First, what are my top 3 outcomes for today? Not tasks. Outcomes. What will be true tonight that is not true right now? Second, when will I work on each outcome? You assign specific time blocks, not vague intentions. Third, what will I say no to today? You identify at least one likely distraction or request that you will decline in advance. That is it. 3 questions. 5 minutes. The simplicity is intentional because complexity kills consistency. Any system you cannot maintain is a system that does not work. Let me break down each component. The top 3 outcomes are not a condensed to-do list. They are your success criteria for the day. The question to ask yourself is this: if I accomplish only these 3 things, will I consider today a success? If the answer is yes, you have the right 3. If the answer is no, you have the wrong 3. Most people resist limiting themselves to 3 outcomes. They want to list 5 or 8 or 12. They worry about forgetting important tasks. But here's what they miss. The limit is not about forgetting. It is about focusing. When everything is a priority, nothing is. When 3 things are priorities, you know exactly where your attention belongs. The tasks you did not list do not disappear. They go on a separate list for later processing. But they do not compete for your focus today. Here is the first major shift in how you think about productivity. Average performers measure their days by how many tasks they completed. Elite performers measure their days by how many priorities they achieved. The first metric rewards busyness. The second metric rewards results. You can complete 50 tasks and move nothing important forward. Or you can complete 3 priorities and transform your week. The number is irrelevant. The outcome is everything. The second component is time blocking, and this is where the system gets its power. Each of your 3 outcomes needs a protected block of time on your calendar, not a mental note to work on it. An actual appointment with yourself that appears on your schedule the same way a meeting with your boss would appear. The reason this matters is psychological. Research from Harvard Business School on commitment devices found that people are dramatically more likely to complete tasks when they have scheduled specific times for them. A task on a to-do list feels optional. A block on your calendar feels like an obligation. Your brain treats them differently. By scheduling your priorities, you leverage this psychological quirk in your favor. Here is how to size your blocks. Estimate how long each outcome will realistically take, then add 20%. We consistently underestimate task duration. This is called the planning fallacy, and every human suffers from it. The 20% buffer protects you from your own optimistic bias. If you finish early, you have bonus time. If you finish exactly when predicted, you are still on schedule. Either way, you avoid the stress of running behind. When you place these blocks matters as much as that you place them. Remember the energy management lever we discussed in the framework chapter. Your cognitive capacity fluctuates throughout the day. For most people, the morning hours hold the highest quality attention. This means your most demanding priority should get your earliest block. Do not waste peak mental hours on email or meetings. Those can happen when your brain is already tired. Protect your best hours for your best work. Now, here is where average performers get trapped. They schedule their priorities, and then they let other things intrude. A colleague stops by with a quick question. An email arrives that seems urgent. A meeting runs long. By the end of the day, the scheduled blocks never happened. The priorities remain incomplete. The plan was perfect, but execution failed. This is why the third question exists. What will I say no to today? This question forces you to anticipate your obstacles before they arrive. You know your patterns. You know which colleague always has urgent requests. You know which meetings tend to run over. You know which notifications pull you away from focused work. By naming these in advance, you create a commitment. You are not deciding in the moment whether to say no. You decided this morning. The moment is just execution. The language of saying no matters. Most people say no in ways that invite negotiation. They say I am kind of busy right now, which sounds like maybe later would work. They say I am not sure I can help, which sounds like try harder to convince me. Elite performers say no with clarity and without apology. They say I have a commitment this morning. Can we schedule time tomorrow afternoon? They say I cannot take that on this week. Let me suggest someone who might help. Clear, direct, and final. No ambiguity. No opening for debate. Here is a practical script you can use. When someone asks for your time during a protected block, say this: I am in the middle of focused work right now. I can give you my full attention at a specific time. Does that work? Notice what this does. It does not refuse to help. It offers help at a different time. Most requests can wait an hour or 2. By offering an alternative, you maintain the relationship while protecting your priority. And in many cases, The person solves their own problem before your offered time arrives. Let me show you what this looks like in practice. Imagine you wake up tomorrow and spend 5 minutes with this system. Your 3 outcomes are: finish the project proposal draft, have the difficult conversation with your underperforming team member, and review the quarterly numbers before Friday's meeting. You block 8 to 10 in the morning for the proposal because it requires deep thinking. You block 2 to 2:30 for the conversation because it needs privacy and emotional energy. You block 4 to 5 for the numbers review because it is important but less cognitively demanding. Then you identify your likely obstacles. Your colleague Sarah usually stops by around 9 with questions. Your phone notifications pull you into Slack constantly. You commit to keeping your door closed during the morning block and putting your phone in a drawer until the proposal is done. That took 5 minutes. But you have just designed a day where your priorities are protected, your time is allocated, and your obstacles are anticipated. Compare this to the alternative: arriving at work, opening email, reacting to whatever comes in, and hoping your important tasks somehow get done. The first approach is intentional. The second is accidental. Over weeks and months, intentional days compound into transformed outcomes. Accidental days compound into frustration. There is one more element to address. What happens when your plan falls apart? Because sometimes it will. Emergencies happen. Priorities shift. Life does not always cooperate with your calendar. When this happens, do not abandon the system. Adapt it. If your morning block gets hijacked by a genuine emergency, find another block later in the day. If one of your 3 outcomes becomes impossible, replace it with the next most important thing. The goal is not perfect execution. The goal is structured flexibility. You always know what you should be doing. When circumstances change, you adjust consciously rather than descending into reactive chaos. The 5-minute daily plan is now installed. Every morning, 3 outcomes, 3 time blocks, 1 pre-committed no. This single practice will produce more meaningful output than most people generate in scattered weeks of reactive work. But there is a problem we have not yet solved. You can schedule a block for deep work, but scheduling it does not make it happen. The moment you sit down to focus, distractions attack from every direction. Your phone buzzes. Email notifications pop up. Colleagues interrupt. Your own mind wanders to other concerns. The time was blocked, but the focus never materialized. That is what we solve next. In the following chapter, you will learn the deep work protection protocol. You will discover how to create an environment where focus is the default and distraction requires effort. And you will install the shields that make your time blocks actually work. Your day is planned. Now we protect it. Chapter 5: Deep Work Protection. Every time you get interrupted, you lose 23 minutes. Not the duration of the interruption itself. 23 minutes of recovery time before your brain returns to the same level of focus. That finding comes from Gloria Mark's research at the University of California, and it explains why you can work 8 hours and accomplish almost nothing. If you are interrupted just 3 times in a morning, you have lost over an hour of productive capacity. Not because you were lazy, not because you lacked discipline, because the architecture of your environment made focus impossible. Here is what nobody tells you about attention. It is not a character trait. It is a system output. Some people seem to focus effortlessly while others struggle constantly. We assume this reflects willpower or natural ability. But the research tells a different story. People who focus well have designed environments that protect focus. People who struggle have environments that attack focus. Put a focused person in a distracting environment, and they will struggle. Put a distracted person in a protected environment, and they will perform. The variable is not the person. It is the system. This chapter gives you the deep work protection protocol. By the time you finish, you will have specific shields against the 3 types of distraction that destroy professional productivity. External interruptions from other people. Digital interruptions from devices and notifications. And internal interruptions from your own wandering mind. Master all 3, and you create something rare in modern work: the ability to think deeply for extended periods. Let me start with external interruptions because they feel the hardest to control. The average professional is interrupted every 11 minutes by colleagues, according to research from the University of California, Irvine. 11 minutes. That means you almost never get a sustained period to think. You start working on something complex, and before you can get traction, someone appears at your desk or sends you a message flagged as urgent. Your brain never enters deep focus because it is constantly being pulled back to the surface. The solution is not to become antisocial or unhelpful. The solution is to create boundaries that separate focused time from available time. When you are in deep work mode, you are protected. When you are in available mode, you are accessible. The key is that you choose which mode you are in, not other people. Here is the first tool in your protocol: the focus signal. This is a visible indicator that tells people you are in deep work mode without requiring you to explain yourself every time. It could be headphones, even if you are not listening to anything. It could be a small sign on your desk. It could be a closed door if you have an office. It could be a status message in Slack that says focused until a specific time. The form matters less than the consistency. When people see your focus signal, they know not to interrupt unless something is genuinely urgent. Over time, they stop interrupting reflexively and start batching their questions for when you are available. But the signal only works if you enforce it. The first few times someone ignores your signal, you have a choice. You can allow the interruption, which trains them that your signal means nothing. Or you can politely redirect them, which trains them that your signal is real. Say something like, "I am in the middle of focused work right now. Can I come find you at 11?" Most people will accept this. They interrupted out of habit, not emergency. By redirecting consistently, you reshape their habit. Average performers hope people will respect their focus. Elite performers create systems that make respecting their focus the default behavior. Hope is not a strategy. Systems are. Now let us address digital interruptions, which are often worse than human ones because they are constant and designed to be irresistible. Every app on your phone was engineered by teams of psychologists and designers whose job was to capture and hold your attention. They studied behavioral psychology. They ran thousands of experiments. They optimized every notification, every sound, every visual cue to trigger a dopamine response that pulls you back to the app. You are not fighting your own lack of discipline. You are fighting billions of dollars of research specifically designed to distract you. And you are fighting it with willpower alone. That is not a fair fight. The solution is to stop fighting and start designing. Remove the battlefield entirely. Here is the second tool in your protocol: the device boundary. During deep work blocks, your phone goes somewhere you cannot see or hear it. Not on silent on your desk. Not flipped over. Physically removed from your environment. A drawer in another room. Your car. A locker. Anywhere that requires effort to retrieve. Research from the University of Texas found that merely having your phone visible, even if it is off, reduces cognitive capacity. Your brain allocates resources to not checking it. Remove the phone, and you recover those resources for actual work. For your computer, the approach is similar. Close every application except the one you need. Turn off all notifications at the system level, not just individual apps. Use a website blocker during deep work blocks if you know certain sites pull you in. The goal is to create a digital environment where distraction requires deliberate effort. When checking social media means opening a blocker, finding your phone, and walking to another room, you stop checking reflexively. The friction protects your focus. Here is a practical setup that takes 5 minutes and transforms your deep work capacity. Before your next focus block, do this. Put your phone in another room. Close your email application completely. Close all browser tabs except what you need. Set a timer for your block duration. Put on headphones as your focus signal. Now work. You will be astonished at how much you accomplish when your environment is not actively attacking your attention. The third type of distraction is the hardest to control because it comes from inside your own mind. Internal interruptions. You sit down to work on something important. Your environment is protected. No phone, no notifications, no colleagues. And yet your mind wanders. You think about the email you need to send later. You remember an errand you forgot. You worry about a conversation you need to have. You are physically present but mentally scattered. The external world is quiet, but the internal world is chaos. This is normal. Your brain is a prediction and planning machine. It constantly generates thoughts about past and future. This is useful for survival, but terrible for focus. The solution is not to suppress these thoughts. That does not work and actually makes them more intrusive. The solution is to capture them and release them. Here is the third tool in your protocol: the capture list. Keep a piece of paper or a simple notes app next to you during deep work. When an unrelated thought arises, write it down in a few words. Send email to David. Call dentist. Check project deadline. Then return to your work. The thought has been captured. Your brain no longer needs to hold it. You have promised yourself you will address it later, and that promise frees your attention to focus now. This technique comes from David Allen's research on cognitive load. Your mind generates open loops, tasks, and thoughts that feel unfinished. Each open loop consumes mental resources as your brain tries to remember it. By capturing the thought externally, you close the loop. The mental resources are released. Over a typical focus session, you might capture 10 or 15 stray thoughts. Each one would have been a micro-interruption. Instead, they become a list you process after your deep work is complete. Average performers let their minds wander and then blame themselves for lacking focus. Elite performers recognize that wandering is the default mode and install systems to redirect attention back to the task. The first approach leads to frustration and self-criticism. The second approach leads to steady improvement over time. Now let me give you the complete deep work protection protocol. This is the system you install before every focus block. Step 1. Decide your duration. Start with 60 to 90 minutes. This is long enough to achieve flow state and short enough to maintain intensity. You can build to longer blocks over time, but most professionals find 90 minutes is the productive limit before diminishing returns. Step 2. Set your environment. Phone removed. Notifications off. Unnecessary applications closed. Headphones on if you use a focus signal. Capture list ready. Step 3. Define your outcome. What specifically will you accomplish in this block? Not what will you work on, but what will be complete when the timer goes off. This creates a clear target for your attention. Step 4. Start the timer and begin. Do not ease into it. Start immediately with your most important task. The first few minutes are when your brain most wants to escape. Push through, and flow state follows. Step 5. When interrupted internally, capture and return. Write the thought, release it, refocus. No judgment, no frustration, just redirect. Step 6. When the timer ends, stop. Take a real break. Walk around. Look out a window. Let your brain shift modes before the next block. This protocol is not complicated, but it is transformational when followed consistently. Most professionals have never experienced true deep work. They think they have focused, but they have only worked without major interruptions. Real focus is qualitatively different. Ideas connect. Problems solve themselves. Hours of scattered work compress into one concentrated session. You produce things you did not know you were capable of producing. There is one more element we need to address. You can protect your focus perfectly, but if your energy is depleted, deep work becomes impossible. You stare at the screen. The words will not come. The ideas will not connect. You have the time, you have the environment, but you do not have the capacity. That is the problem we solve next. In the following chapter, you will learn to work with your biology instead of against it. You will discover your personal energy rhythm and how to align your work with it. And you will understand why rest is not the opposite of productivity, but an essential input to it. Your focus is protected. Now we fuel it. Chapter 6. Energy Management. Your brain consumes 20% of your body's total energy while representing only 2% of your body weight. That ratio, discovered by researchers at the National Institutes of Health, explains something most productivity advice completely ignores. You cannot manage time without managing energy. You can schedule a deep work block at 3 in the afternoon, but if your cognitive capacity is depleted, you will stare at the screen accomplishing nothing. You can protect 90 minutes for your most important project, but if your brain is running on fumes, those 90 minutes produce less than 20 minutes of morning focus would have. Here is the uncomfortable truth. Most professionals are working against their biology instead of with it. They schedule important thinking for when their energy is lowest. They push through fatigue instead of recovering strategically. They treat their brain like a machine that should produce consistent output for 8 or 10 hours straight. But your brain is not a machine. It is an organ with predictable rhythms, and those rhythms determine what you are capable of at any given moment. This chapter shows you how to map your personal energy rhythm and align your work with it. The result is not working more hours. It is extracting dramatically more value from the hours you already work. Let me start with the science of how your energy actually works. Your body operates on what researchers call ultradian rhythms. These are cycles of approximately 90 to 120 minutes during which your brain moves from higher to lower alertness. This pattern repeats throughout the day, creating natural peaks and troughs in your cognitive capacity. During a peak, complex thinking feels relatively easy. During a trough, the same thinking feels like pushing a boulder uphill. Most people ignore these rhythms entirely. They work whenever work needs to happen, regardless of their mental state. When they hit a trough, they drink more coffee, push harder, and produce mediocre output while feeling exhausted. Then they wonder why they cannot sustain high performance. The answer is simple. They are fighting their biology instead of leveraging it. Elite performers do something different. They observe their patterns, identify their peak periods, and ruthlessly protect those periods for their most demanding work. Everything else, email, meetings, administrative tasks, gets pushed to lower energy periods where it belongs. Here is how to map your personal rhythm. For 1 week, rate your mental clarity on a simple scale every 2 hours. Use 1 through 10. 1 means foggy and unfocused. 10 means sharp and energized. Do this honestly, not based on how you think you should feel, but how you actually feel. At the end of the week, look at your data. You will see patterns. Maybe you peak between 8 and 11 in the morning, then again between 4 and 6 in the afternoon. Maybe you are useless before 10, but powerful until midnight. The specific pattern does not matter. What matters is that you know your pattern. Once you know your rhythm, you redesign your schedule around it. Your peak hours become sacred. No meetings during peak time unless absolutely unavoidable. No email during peak time. No administrative work during peak time. These hours belong to your most important, most cognitively demanding priorities. The work that requires creativity, strategic thinking, or complex problem-solving happens here and only here. Your trough periods become your processing time. This is when you handle communication. This is when you attend meetings that do not require your best thinking. This is when you do administrative tasks, expense reports, scheduling, and routine decisions. These activities do not require peak cognition. By placing them in your troughs, you accomplish them without wasting your best hours. Average performers let their calendars determine when they do what. Someone schedules a meeting at 9 in the morning, so they attend, even if 9 is their peak creative hour. An email arrives at 10, so they respond, even if that interrupts their most productive period. By the time they have finished reacting to external demands, their peak hours are gone. Elite performers invert this. They block their peak hours first, then allow meetings and communications to fill the remaining space. External demands adapt to their rhythm, not the other way around. Here is a practical structure you can implement tomorrow. Block your peak hours on your calendar as a recurring appointment with yourself. Call it focus time, strategic work, or anything that signals importance. Make it visible to others so they know not to schedule over it. Treat it with the same respect you would treat a meeting with your most important client. Because in a very real sense, that is exactly what it is. You are your most important client. Your peak cognitive hours are your most valuable asset. Protecting them is not selfish. It is strategic. Now let us talk about what happens when your energy depletes, because it will, every single day, no matter how well you manage your schedule. The traditional approach to fatigue is to push through it. Drink another coffee. Force yourself to concentrate. Keep grinding until the work is done. This approach feels disciplined, but research shows it is actually counterproductive. A study from the University of Illinois found that prolonged attention to a single task actually degrades performance. Your brain needs periodic disengagement to maintain accuracy and creativity. The researchers called this the vigilance decrement. and it affects everyone regardless of willpower or motivation. The solution is strategic recovery. Short breaks taken before you feel exhausted, not after. Here is the rhythm that maximizes sustained output. Work in focused blocks of 60 to 90 minutes. Then take a genuine break of 10 to 20 minutes. Not a break where you check email or scroll through social media. A real break. Walk outside. Look at something far away to rest your eyes. Have a conversation that has nothing to do with work. Let your mind wander without directing it. These activities allow your brain to consolidate what you have been working on and restore the cognitive resources you depleted. The science behind this is fascinating. When you focus intensely, your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for complex thinking, accumulates metabolic waste products. This buildup literally makes thinking harder. During rest, your brain clears this waste through a process called the glymphatic system. Without adequate rest, the waste accumulates, and your thinking becomes progressively slower and less accurate. Pushing through fatigue does not demonstrate discipline. It demonstrates ignorance of how your brain actually works. Here is what most people get wrong about breaks. They think of rest as the absence of productivity, something you do when all the work is finished. But the work is never finished. There is always something more you could do. If you wait until everything is complete to rest, you will never rest. And your productivity will suffer far more than if you had rested strategically. Elite performers schedule recovery the same way they schedule work. They do not hope for rest. They plan for it. After a 90-minute deep work block, they block 10 minutes for recovery. That recovery time is not optional. It is not the first thing to cut when schedules get busy. It is protected because they understand that the next 90-minute block depends on it. Let me give you a specific recovery protocol that takes 10 minutes and restores significant cognitive capacity. First, stand up and move away from your workspace. Physical movement increases blood flow to the brain and triggers a neurochemical shift. Even a short walk to another room helps. Second, look at something distant, preferably outside. Your eyes have been focused on a screen 2 feet away. Relaxing them by focusing on a distant point reduces eye strain and mental fatigue. Third, do not consume new information. No checking your phone. No reading articles. Your brain needs a break from processing, not different processing. Fourth, if possible, have a brief social interaction that is not work-related. Social connection activates different neural networks and gives your focused thinking systems time to recover. Fifth, drink water. Dehydration, even mild dehydration, significantly impairs cognitive function. Most professionals are chronically underhydrated. That sequence takes 10 minutes. It does not feel productive. You are not checking anything off a list. But those 10 minutes restore capacity that would otherwise be lost. You return to your next focus block sharp instead of depleted. Over a full workday, strategic recovery can add 2 or 3 extra hours of high-quality output compared to pushing through without breaks. There is one more element of energy management we need to address: sleep. The research here is unambiguous. After approximately 16 hours of wakefulness, cognitive performance deteriorates rapidly. After 20 hours, your mental impairment equals that of someone who is legally drunk. You would never go to an important meeting intoxicated, but if you slept 5 hours last night, you are showing up impaired. Every decision is worse. Every creative idea is harder to access. Every problem takes longer to solve. I am not going to lecture you about sleeping 8 hours. You have heard that advice before. What I will tell you is this: the hour before you sleep has an outsized impact on sleep quality. Screens before bed suppress melatonin production and fragment your sleep architecture. Work stress before bed keeps your mind in problem-solving mode when it should be downshifting. The most productive thing you can do for tomorrow is protect your wind-down time tonight. Average performers sacrifice sleep to get more done. Then they spend tomorrow operating at 50% capacity, taking twice as long to complete tasks they could have finished easily if rested. Elite performers protect sleep as a non-negotiable productivity input. They understand that an hour of sleep often returns 2 or 3 hours of high-quality output the next day. Your energy system is now mapped. You know your peak hours and protect them for important work. You know your troughs and use them for routine tasks. You take strategic recovery breaks before depletion instead of pushing through fatigue. And you treat sleep as the productivity multiplier it actually is. But there is still a fundamental constraint we have not addressed. Even with perfect energy management, you are still one person with finite capacity. There are only so many peak hours. There is only so much you can personally produce. At some point, maximizing your individual output is not enough. You need to multiply your capacity through others. That is the leverage section of your productivity system. In the next chapter, you will learn the delegation ladder, a framework for identifying what should leave your plate and how to transfer it so it actually gets done. You will discover why most delegation fails and how to make yours succeed. And you will unlock the lever that separates professionals who are busy from professionals who scale. Your energy is optimized. Now we multiply your output. Chapter 7. The Delegation Ladder. The highest paid professionals in any organization spend 80% of their time on activities that someone earning half their salary could do. That finding from a Harvard Business Review analysis should disturb you. It means that most of your workday is misallocated. You are doing $20 per hour tasks when you should be doing $100 per hour tasks. Not because you are lazy or disorganized, because nobody ever taught you a systematic framework for getting work off your plate. Here is the paradox that keeps professionals trapped. The people who most need to delegate are the ones who struggle most to do it. They are competent. They are reliable. They built their careers by being the person who gets things done. Now that identity works against them, they believe they should handle everything. They think delegating means admitting they cannot keep up. They fear that others will not do the work as well as they would. So they keep doing tasks that should have left their plate years ago. And their careers plateau because there are only so many hours in a day. This chapter breaks that pattern. You will learn the delegation ladder, a 5-level framework for identifying what to delegate and how to delegate it so it actually gets done. By the end, you will have a systematic way to multiply your output without multiplying your hours. Let me start by reframing what delegation actually is. Most people think of delegation as giving away tasks you do not want to do. That framing is completely wrong. Delegation is not about avoidance. It is about allocation. Every hour you spend on a task someone else could do is an hour stolen from tasks only you can do. When you delegate effectively, you are not shirking responsibility. You are concentrating your limited capacity on where it creates the most value. Think about it economically. If your expertise and judgment are worth $200 per hour to your organization, but you spend 4 hours daily on tasks that require $50 per hour skills, you are destroying $600 of value every single day. That is $3,000 per week. Over $150,000 per year in misallocated capacity. Delegation is not a nice to have. It is an economic imperative. Here is the delegation ladder. 5 levels, from simplest to most complex. Level 1 is task delegation. This is the most basic form. You hand off a specific, well-defined task to someone else. Schedule this meeting. Format this document. Send this email. The task has clear parameters, and the person executing it needs minimal context or judgment. Most professionals can do this, though many still do not. If you find yourself doing routine tasks that follow predictable steps, you are operating at level 1 when you should be delegating at level 1. Level 2 is process delegation. Here you delegate not just a single task, but a recurring process. Instead of asking someone to schedule one meeting, you give them responsibility for managing your calendar. Instead of formatting one document, they handle all document formatting for your team. The person needs to understand the process, not just the individual steps. This requires more initial setup, but pays dividends because the work leaves your plate permanently, not just once. Level 3 is project delegation. This is where you hand off a complete project with defined outcomes, but flexibility in execution. You specify what success looks like, provide necessary resources, and let the person determine how to get there. This requires significant trust and someone with the judgment to make good decisions without checking in constantly. Many professionals never reach this level because they cannot let go of control over how things are done. Level 4 is outcome delegation. Here you delegate a result without specifying the project. Instead of saying complete this marketing campaign, you say increase qualified leads by 20% this quarter. The person receiving the delegation determines what projects, processes, and tasks are needed to achieve the outcome. This is executive-level delegation. It requires highly capable people and clear accountability structures. Level 5 is authority delegation. This is the highest level. You delegate not just outcomes, but decision-making authority within a defined domain. The person does not check with you before acting. They own an area completely. You review results periodically, but do not involve yourself in the day-to-day. Few professionals reach this level because it requires building genuine capability in others and releasing control entirely. Now, here is why most delegation fails. People attempt level 3 or 4 delegation without having built the foundation. They hand off a project to someone who has never been given clear task instructions. They expect outcomes from people who have never managed a process. The delegation collapses, the person fails, and the delegator concludes that it is faster to just do it myself. But the problem was not delegation itself. The problem was attempting to skip levels. Average performers delegate randomly and react when it fails. Elite performers delegate systematically, starting at level 1 and building capability progressively. The first approach creates frustration for everyone. The second approach creates a team that can eventually operate without constant oversight. Here is a practical framework for deciding what to delegate. Audit your last week. Write down every significant activity you did. Now categorize each one using 2 questions. First, does this activity require my specific expertise, relationships, or authority? Second, is this activity the highest value use of my time? Activities that answer no to both questions should be delegated immediately. Activities that answer no to the first but yes to the second should be systematized so they can eventually be delegated. Activities that answer yes to both are your core work. Protect and prioritize them. Most professionals who do this audit are shocked. They discover that 60 or 70% of their week is spent on activities that do not require them specifically. They have been substituting their own labor for proper systems and capable team members. The delegation ladder gives them a path out. But delegation only works if the work actually gets done. This is where standard operating procedures become essential. An SOP is simply a documented process that allows someone to complete a task without having to figure it out from scratch or ask you constant questions. It captures your best practices so they can be replicated. Without SOPs, delegation becomes an endless series of explanations. You spend more time teaching than you would have spent doing. With SOPs, you teach once, document it, and the knowledge transfers permanently. Here is how to create an effective SOP. The next time you do a task you want to delegate, record yourself doing it. Use a screen recording tool if it is computer-based. Use voice memos if it involves phone calls or in-person work. Capture everything, including the decisions you make and why you make them. Then transcribe this into a step-by-step document. Include screenshots where helpful. Note common mistakes and how to avoid them. Add criteria for what good looks like so the person can self-assess their work. This process takes time up front. Creating a proper SOP for a 30-minute task might take 2 hours. But here is the math. If that task recurs weekly and you delegate it successfully, you save 30 minutes per week forever. In just 4 weeks, you have recouped your investment. Everything after that is pure gain. Over a year, a 2-hour SOP investment returns 26 hours. Over 5 years, 130 hours. From a single documentation session. Average performers hoard knowledge because it makes them feel valuable. Elite performers document and distribute knowledge because it makes them scalable. The first approach creates bottlenecks. The second approach creates leverage. Let me give you the delegation conversation framework. This is how you hand off work so it actually gets done correctly. Step 1. Define the outcome clearly. What does success look like? Be specific. Not make this better, but reduce the error rate to under 2%. Not finish soon, but complete by Thursday at 3 p.m. Ambiguous outcomes produce ambiguous results. Step 2. Explain the why. People execute better when they understand purpose. This report helps the leadership team make resource allocation decisions is more motivating than "I need this report." Context creates ownership. Step 3. Specify constraints and resources. What boundaries must they work within? Budget limits, time limits, brand guidelines, approval requirements. What resources can they access? Budget, tools, other people's time. Clear constraints prevent wasted effort. Clear resources prevent unnecessary obstacles. Step 4. Define the check-in structure. How will you monitor progress without micromanaging? For level 1 and 2 delegation, frequent check-ins are appropriate. For level 3 and above, you want milestone reviews, not constant oversight. Set expectations up front so neither of you is surprised. Step 5. Address the failure protocol. What should they do if something goes wrong? When should they escalate versus solve it themselves? Having this conversation before problems arise prevents paralysis when problems occur. This framework takes 5 to 10 minutes per delegation. It feels slower than just doing the task yourself. But that feeling is deceptive. The 5 minutes you invest in proper delegation saves hours of rework, miscommunication, and frustration. More importantly, it builds capability. Each successful delegation makes the next one easier because the person grows more competent. There is one final element we need to address. Many professionals resist delegation because they genuinely believe no one can do it as well as they can. And they might be right. In the short term, a task you have done hundreds of times will not be done as well by someone doing it for the first time. That is obvious. But here's what they miss. The goal is not perfection on every task. The goal is maximum total output. If you can do a task at 95% quality in 1 hour, and someone else can do it at 85% quality in 1 hour after training, the math changes when you consider volume. Your 1 hour of perfect work versus their 1 hour plus your 1 hour doing higher value work. The slightly lower quality on the delegated task is more than offset by your higher value contribution elsewhere. You have to think in systems, not in individual tasks. And here is the part most people forget. The person you delegate to will improve. Their first attempt might be 85%. Their 10th attempt might be 93%. By the time they have done it 50 times, they might exceed your quality because they have more practice than you ever had. Delegation is not just about your productivity today. It is about building capability that compounds over time. Your delegation system is now installed. You have the 5-level ladder to identify what and how to delegate. You have the SOP framework to transfer knowledge permanently. You have the delegation conversation structure to set people up for success. And you have the mindset shift from doing to developing. But there is a massive time drain we have not yet addressed. One that cannot be delegated because it requires your presence. Meetings. The average professional spends over 20 hours per week in meetings, and research suggests that half of that time is wasted. 20 hours. That is half a standard work week, gone. In the next chapter, you will learn meeting hygiene, the protocol for eliminating unnecessary meetings and making necessary ones efficient. You will discover the questions that filter out meetings that should be emails. And you will reclaim hours that have been silently stolen from your week. Your work is delegated. Now we reclaim your calendar. Chapter 8. Meeting hygiene. 11 million meetings happen every single day in the United States alone. Research from the Harvard Business Review found that executives spend an average of 23 hours per week in meetings, up from less than 10 hours in the 1960s. But here is the number that should make you angry. When surveyed, 71% of senior managers said their meetings are unproductive and inefficient. 71%. That means nearly 3/4 of the time you spend in meetings is, by the admission of the people running them, wasted. Do the math on your own calendar. If you attend 15 hours of meetings weekly and 70% are unproductive, you are losing over 10 hours every week. 10 hours. That is more than an entire workday, vanished into conversations that accomplished nothing. Over a year, that is over 500 hours. Over a decade of your career, 5,000 hours. Gone. Not because you were unproductive, because you were trapped in rooms where productivity went to die. This chapter gives you the meeting hygiene protocol, a systematic approach to eliminating unnecessary meetings and making necessary ones efficient. By the end, you will have filters that protect your calendar, structures that make meetings actually work, and the confidence to decline invitations that do not deserve your time. Let me start with a fundamental truth that most professionals never question. The default should be no meeting, not yes meeting. Somewhere along the way, we collectively decided that meetings are how work happens. Need to share information? Call a meeting. Need to make a decision? Call a meeting. Need to solve a problem? Call a meeting. But meetings are actually a very expensive way to accomplish any of these things. They require synchronizing multiple calendars. They require everyone to stop what they are doing at the same time. They require travel, even if just down the hall. And they require recovery time afterward as people context switch back to their real work. Before any meeting gets scheduled, it should pass through 3 filters. If it fails any filter, the meeting should not happen. Filter 1. Does this require synchronous discussion? Many meetings are actually information transfers disguised as collaboration. Someone shares an update. Others listen. Questions are asked and answered. This can almost always be an email, a recorded video, or a shared document with comments. Synchronous time is only justified when real-time interaction creates value that asynchronous communication cannot. Brainstorming where ideas build on each other. Sensitive conversations where tone matters. Negotiations where reading reactions is essential. If you cannot articulate why this specific topic requires real-time interaction, it does not require a meeting. Filter 2. Are the right people available and necessary? A meeting with 10 people where only 3 contribute is not a meeting. It is a performance with an audience. Every person in a meeting should have a reason to be there. They either have information others need, have authority to make decisions being discussed, or will be responsible for executing the outcomes. If someone is invited just to be informed, send them the notes afterward. Their presence adds cost without adding value. Filter 3. Is there a clear desired outcome? This is where most meetings fail. They have topics, but not outcomes. The invitation says discuss the project, but what does success look like? A decision made? A problem solved? Actions assigned? If you cannot state the specific outcome you want from the meeting, you are not ready to have the meeting. You are just hoping that putting people in a room will somehow produce progress. Average performers accept meeting invitations by default and wonder where their time went. Elite performers filter every invitation through these 3 questions and protect their calendars ruthlessly. The first approach feels polite but produces chaos. The second approach feels difficult but produces results. Here is the language for declining meetings without damaging relationships. When you receive an invitation that fails the filters, respond with something like this. Thanks for including me. I want to make sure I add value to this discussion. Can you help me understand the specific outcome we are trying to achieve and what you need from me specifically? This response is not a refusal. It is a clarification request. Often, the organizer will realize they do not have a clear outcome and will refine the meeting or cancel it. Other times, they will clarify your role and you can make an informed decision about attendance. If the meeting still seems unnecessary after clarification, try this. I have a conflict during that time, but I want to support this. Could you send me the key questions in advance? I will send my input beforehand, and you can include me if real-time discussion of my points is needed. This offers an alternative that respects their need while protecting your time. Most people will accept this because they genuinely do not need you in the room. They invited you out of habit or courtesy. Now let us address the meetings that do pass your filters. Even necessary meetings are usually run poorly. Here is the protocol for making them efficient. First, every meeting needs an agenda sent at least 24 hours in advance. Not a topic list. An agenda with specific questions to be answered or decisions to be made. Instead of discuss marketing budget, the agenda should say decide on Q3 marketing budget allocation between channels, with Sarah presenting options and the team deciding before we leave the room. The specificity changes everything. People come prepared. Discussion stays focused. Outcomes become achievable. Second, every meeting needs a designated driver. This is the person responsible for keeping the meeting on track. They watch the time. They redirect tangents. They ensure each agenda item reaches a conclusion before moving to the next. Without a driver, meetings drift. Someone brings up a related topic. That triggers another thought. 20 minutes later, you have discussed nothing on the agenda and everything adjacent to it. The driver's job is to say that is an important point. Let us capture it for a separate discussion and return to our current item. Third, every meeting needs a hard stop that is actually honored. If the meeting is scheduled for 60 minutes, it ends at 60 minutes, even if the agenda is not complete. This sounds counterproductive, but it is actually essential. When people know the meeting will run over, they relax into inefficiency. There is always more time. When they know the meeting will end on schedule regardless, they tighten their communication. They get to the point. They make decisions instead of deferring them. The constraint creates efficiency. Here is a specific structure that transforms meeting productivity. It is called the 3/3 meeting. The first third is context. Quickly share only the information necessary for the discussion. No lengthy presentations. No comprehensive backgrounds. Just what people need to engage with the agenda items. The second third is discussion. This is where actual dialogue happens. Questions are asked. Perspectives are shared. Options are debated. The final third is conclusion. Decisions are made. Actions are assigned with specific owners and deadlines. The meeting ends with everyone knowing exactly what was decided and who is responsible for what. Most meetings fail because they are all context and discussion with no conclusion. People leave saying that was a good conversation without any clarity on what happens next. The 3/3 structure forces closure because you know the final third is coming and it is dedicated to conclusions. Average performers let meetings happen to them. They attend whatever appears on their calendar, sit through whatever discussion unfolds, and leave with vague intentions to follow up. Elite performers design their meetings intentionally. They filter invitations. They require agendas. They drive discussions toward conclusions. They leave with clear outcomes and assigned actions. The first approach feels easier moment to moment, but wastes thousands of hours over a career. The second approach requires more discipline, but produces actual results. Let me give you one more tool: the meeting audit. At the end of each week, review every meeting you attended. For each one, ask 3 questions. Did this meeting need to happen? Did it achieve its intended outcome? Did I need to be there? Be honest. Most professionals who do this audit discover that 30 to 50% of their meetings fail at least one of these questions. That represents hours of recoverable time every week. When you identify patterns, act on them. If a recurring meeting consistently fails to achieve outcomes, propose restructuring it or eliminating it. If you consistently attend meetings where you add no value, negotiate your removal. If certain organizers consistently run inefficient meetings, have a direct conversation about expectations. The audit creates awareness. Action creates change. Now, there is a special category of meeting that deserves attention: the one-on-one. These are meetings between you and a direct report, or between you and your manager. They serve a different purpose than group meetings and need different treatment. One-on-ones are not status updates. If you are using them to ask what are you working on, you are wasting them. Status can be shared asynchronously. One-on-ones are for the conversations that require synchronous, private dialogue. Career development. Obstacles the person needs help removing. Feedback that is too nuanced for email. Relationship building that creates trust. When you reframe one-on-ones this way, they become valuable instead of routine. Here is the structure that makes one-on-ones effective. The direct report owns the agenda. They bring the topics they need to discuss. You listen, coach, and remove obstacles. This inverts the typical dynamic where the manager drives the conversation. But it is more effective because the direct report knows what they need better than you do. Your job is to be a resource, not an interrogator. Your meeting hygiene protocol is now installed. You have filters to eliminate unnecessary meetings. You have language to decline gracefully. You have structures to make necessary meetings efficient. You have the audit process to continuously improve. But meetings are only one form of communication that drains your time. The other constant drain is asynchronous communication. Email, Slack, Teams, text messages. The never-ending stream of notifications that fragments your attention throughout the day. Research shows that the average professional checks email 74 times daily. 74 interruptions, each one pulling you away from focused work. In the next chapter, you will learn the communication rules that tame this chaos. You will discover how to batch your communication instead of responding constantly. You will install boundaries that protect your focus while maintaining responsiveness. And you will finally escape the trap of being always available but never productive. Your meetings are clean. Now we tame the inbox. Chapter 9. Communication Rules. The average professional loses 2.1 hours every single day to email. That number comes from McKinsey's workplace productivity research, and it does not include Slack, Teams, text messages, or the dozens of other channels competing for your attention. When you add those, the total communication burden often exceeds 4 hours daily. Half your workday, consumed by responding to other people's priorities instead of advancing your own. But here is the part that will change how you think about this problem. When researchers at the University of British Columbia studied email behavior, they found something surprising. People who checked email only 3 times per day reported significantly lower stress and higher productivity than those who checked constantly. Both groups responded to the same total volume of messages. The difference was not in how much they communicated. It was in how they communicated. Batching produced better results than constant monitoring. This chapter gives you the communication rules that transform how you handle asynchronous messages. By the end, you will have a system that keeps you responsive without keeping you reactive. You will protect your focus while maintaining relationships. And you will escape the trap that has stolen hours from every professional you know. Let me start with the core principle. Communication should be batched, not continuous. Your brain is not designed for constant context switching. Every time you check email, your attention shifts from whatever you were doing to processing incoming information. Then it shifts again as you decide how to respond. Then it shifts again as you return to your original task. Each shift costs cognitive resources. Each shift requires recovery time. The cumulative effect of checking messages throughout the day is a fractured attention that never fully engages with anything. Elite performers understand this. They do not have superhuman willpower that allows them to resist checking messages. They have systems that remove the option. They batch their communication into specific windows and protect the time between windows for focused work. This is not unresponsive. It is strategically responsive. They answer every message that needs answering. They just do it at times they choose rather than times others choose for them. Here is the first rule in your communication protocol. Check messages at predetermined times, not continuously. For most professionals, 3 email windows per day is optimal. Once in the morning after your first deep work block, once after lunch, once near the end of the day. Each window is a focused session dedicated entirely to processing messages. Between windows, email is closed. Notifications are off. You are not available because you are doing the work that actually creates value. The objection you are thinking right now is predictable. But what if something urgent comes in? Here is the reality. True emergencies are rare. Most things that feel urgent are simply other people's priorities that they have labeled as urgent to get faster responses. They would wait an hour or 2 without catastrophic consequences. And for the genuine emergencies that do exist, email is usually the wrong channel anyway. If something is truly urgent, people call or walk over. They do not send an email and hope you check it soon. If your role genuinely requires faster response times, adjust the windows. Check every 2 hours instead of 3 times daily. But do not abandon the batching principle. The difference between checking every 2 hours and checking every 10 minutes is enormous in terms of cognitive cost. Protect some focus time, even if you cannot protect as much as you would like. Here is the second rule. Process to 0 during each window. When you open your inbox, do not just scan and defer. Handle everything. For each message, you have 4 options. Delete it if it requires no action and has no reference value. Delegate it if someone else should handle it. Do it immediately if it takes less than 2 minutes. Defer it to a specific time on your calendar if it requires more than 2 minutes. This process comes from David Allen's work on knowledge worker productivity, and the 2-minute rule is transformational. Most emails require short responses. A quick answer, a brief clarification, a simple approval. If you can handle these in under 2 minutes, handle them now. Do not move them to a to respond folder. Do not flag them for later. The cognitive cost of leaving them open is greater than the time cost of responding immediately. For messages that require real work, do not leave them in your inbox as reminders. Move the action to your task system and archive the email. Your inbox is not a to-do list. It is an intake channel. Treating it like a task manager creates the anxiety of seeing dozens of unprocessed items every time you check messages. Processing to zero eliminates that anxiety. Average performers have thousands of emails in their inbox, a mix of read, unread, important, and irrelevant, all jumbled together. They scan constantly, looking for what seems urgent, missing things that matter, and feeling perpetual low-grade stress about the chaos. Elite performers have nearly empty inboxes because they process systematically. Everything has been handled, delegated, or scheduled. Nothing is lingering, creating mental weight. The first approach feels like treading water. The second approach feels like control. Now let us address the second major communication drain. Instant messaging platforms like Slack and Teams. These tools were designed for quick, casual communication. They have become something else entirely. An always-on expectation machine where any delay in response signals disengagement. The red notification badge triggers anxiety. The typing indicator creates pressure to respond before you have thought through your answer. People who would never call you 50 times a day feel perfectly comfortable sending 50 Slack messages. Here is the third rule. Treat chat like email, not like a conversation. This is a mental shift, not a technical one. When you receive a Slack message, you do not owe an immediate response any more than you owe an immediate response to an email. The platform may be designed for real-time interaction, but your usage does not have to conform to that design. You can check Slack during your communication windows and ignore it the rest of the time. You can set your status to indicate when you will be responsive. You can turn off notifications entirely and check proactively. The pushback you will encounter is cultural. Many teams have established norms of instant response. Changing those norms requires explicit communication. Here is language that works. I am trying an experiment to improve my focus and output. I will be checking Slack at specific times rather than constantly. If something is truly urgent and cannot wait until my next check-in, please call me. Otherwise, I will respond within a certain number of hours. Most people will accept this because they respect the intention. Some may resist because your boundaries threaten their expectation of instant access. Hold the boundary anyway. Your productivity is more important than their comfort. Over time, they will adjust. They will batch their questions instead of sending them one at a time. They will solve simple problems themselves instead of reflexively messaging you. Your boundary improves not just your productivity, but the productivity of your interactions. Here is the fourth rule. Write messages that reduce future messages. Most professional communication creates more communication. Someone sends a vague question. You send a vague answer. They send a follow-up clarification. You respond to the clarification. For messages to accomplish what one clear message could have handled. Before you send any message, ask yourself what information the recipient would need to fully handle this without coming back to me. Then include that information. If you are proposing a meeting, include 3 specific time options rather than asking when are you free. If you are requesting a decision, include your recommendation and the key considerations rather than just presenting the question. If you are delegating a task, include the outcome, the deadline, and the resources rather than saying, "Can you handle this?" and waiting for clarifying questions. This practice is called front-loading, and it dramatically reduces your communication volume. Each message you send is complete. Recipients can act without requiring additional exchanges. What would have been 5 back-and-forth messages becomes 1 message and 1 response. Over dozens of daily interactions, the time savings compounds significantly. Here's the 5th rule. Establish communication agreements with key collaborators. Your manager, your direct reports, your closest colleagues. These are the people you communicate with most frequently. Having explicit agreements about communication expectations eliminates constant negotiation and uncertainty. For each key relationship, establish 3 things. First, expected response times for different channels. Email within 24 hours, Slack within 4 hours, phone for genuine emergencies. Second, preferred channels for different types of communication, status updates via email, quick questions via Slack, sensitive feedback via video or in person. Third, boundaries around availability. No work messages after certain hours, no expectations during focused work blocks, no guilt for delayed responses during deep work. These conversations feel awkward, but they eliminate ongoing friction. Instead of wondering whether your delayed response upset someone, you both know the expectations. Instead of guessing which channel to use, you have agreed preferences. Instead of feeling always on, you have defined when you are actually on. Average performers are at the mercy of other people's communication habits. They respond on everyone else's timeline using everyone else's preferred channels. Their boundaries are constantly violated because they never established boundaries. Elite performers define their communication terms and train their collaborators to respect them. The first approach creates reactive chaos. The second approach creates structured responsiveness. Let me give you a practical implementation plan for this week. Day 1. Audit your communication volume. Count how many emails and Slack messages you sent and received. Note the times you checked each platform. This baseline shows you the scope of the problem. Day 2. Establish your communication windows. Decide when you will check email and chat. Block those times on your calendar. Set up systems to close applications and disable notifications between windows. Day 3. Practice processing to zero. During each window, handle every message using the 4-option framework. Delete, delegate, do, or defer. End each window with an empty or near-empty inbox. Day 4. Implement front-loading. Before sending each message, add the information that will prevent follow-up questions. Notice how your conversations become shorter. Day 5. Have one communication agreement conversation. Pick your most important collaborator and discuss expectations. Use this as a template for future conversations. Your communication rules are now installed. You have batching to protect focus. You have processing to zero to eliminate inbox anxiety. You have boundaries for instant messaging. You have front-loading to reduce volume. You have agreements for key relationships. But all of these systems, everything we have built across these chapters, requires one more element. A way to ensure the systems stay working. A checkpoint that catches drift before it becomes collapse. Without this element, even the best designed productivity system gradually degrades until you are back where you started. In the final chapter, you will learn the weekly review, the control system that holds everything together. You will discover how to evaluate your execution honestly and adjust before small problems become big ones. And you will install the habit that makes all other habits sustainable. Your communication is controlled. Now we lock in the system. Chapter 10. The Weekly Review. Imagine 2 versions of yourself 1 year from now. The first version implemented everything in this book for about 3 weeks. Then life got busy. A deadline hit. A crisis emerged. The system slipped. First, the daily planning stopped. Then the communication windows blurred. Then the deep work blocks disappeared. Within 2 months, that version was back to reactive chaos, wondering why productivity systems never seemed to stick. The second version implemented the same systems. The same busy periods hit. The same crises emerged. But this version had one additional practice. 30 minutes every week, dedicated to reviewing what worked, what did not, and what needed adjustment. When the daily planning slipped, the weekly review caught it before it became a habit. When the deep work blocks got invaded, the weekly review diagnosed why and fixed the vulnerability. 1 year later, this version operates at a level the first version cannot even imagine. The difference between these 2 futures is not willpower. It is not discipline. It is a single practice that takes less time than watching 1 episode of television. The weekly review. Research from the American Psychological Association on behavior change found that self-monitoring is the single most effective strategy for maintaining new habits. People who track their behavior are dramatically more likely to sustain change than people who simply intend to change. The weekly review is structured self-monitoring. It forces you to confront reality instead of drifting on assumptions. It catches problems while they are small, and it creates the feedback loop that turns temporary changes into permanent transformation. This chapter gives you the complete weekly review protocol. By the time you finish, you will have the control system that holds everything else together. The practice that makes all other practices sustainable. Let me explain why systems decay without reviews. Every productivity system faces entropy, the natural tendency toward disorder. You design a perfect schedule, but then exceptions accumulate. A meeting runs over here. An urgent request intrudes there. Small compromises stack up until your beautiful system is unrecognizable. This happens to everyone. The question is not whether your systems will face pressure. The question is whether you have a mechanism to restore them. The weekly review is that mechanism. It is your scheduled appointment with reality. A time when you step back from doing work to evaluate how the work is going. Without this practice, you are operating blind. You assume things are fine until they obviously are not. By then, the drift has become so significant that recovery feels overwhelming. Average performers wait for breakdowns before examining their systems. Something fails dramatically, and only then do they investigate what went wrong. Elite performers examine their systems regularly, whether they feel broken or not. They catch the small cracks before they become collapses. The first approach is reactive maintenance. The second approach is preventive maintenance. In any complex system, preventive maintenance is always less costly than reactive repair. Here is the complete weekly review protocol. It has 3 phases and takes between 20 and 40 minutes, depending on how thorough you want to be. Phase 1 is clearing. This takes 5 to 10 minutes and gets everything out of your head and into your system. Start by processing any loose papers, notes, or physical items that accumulated during the week. Business cards you collected, notes from meetings, random things you wrote on napkins. Either enter these into your system or discard them. Nothing stays in physical limbo. Next, process all your inboxes to 0. Email, Slack, voicemail, any intake channel where items have accumulated. Use the same 4-option framework from the communication chapter. Delete, delegate, do if under 2 minutes, or defer to your task system. The goal is empty inboxes, not because empty is virtuous, but because processed is powerful. Everything has been handled or scheduled. Finally, do a mental sweep. Ask yourself what has your attention right now that you have not captured anywhere. New projects that emerged this week. Commitments you made in conversations. Ideas that occurred to you. Worries that keep surfacing. Write everything down. Get it out of your head and into your system where you can actually manage it. Phase 2 is reviewing. This takes 10 to 15 minutes and evaluates how your systems are performing. Pull up your calendar and review the past week. What meetings happened? Were they valuable or wasteful? Did your deep work blocks actually remain protected, or did they get invaded? How accurate was your time estimation for tasks? This review is not about guilt. It is about data. You are gathering information about what actually happened so you can make informed adjustments. Next, review your task system. What did you complete? What rolled over from previous weeks? Are there items that keep getting deferred week after week? Those perpetually postponed tasks are signals. Either they are not actually important and should be deleted, or something is blocking you from doing them, and that block needs to be addressed. Now review your 90-day vision. How much progress did you make this week toward your major outcomes? Be honest. If you made no progress, acknowledge it. If you made significant progress, recognize it. This is your scoreboard. It tells you whether your busy weeks are actually productive weeks or just busy weeks. Here is the scoreboard structure that makes this concrete. For each of your 3 to 5 90-day outcomes, rate your weekly progress on a simple scale. 0 means no progress. 1 means minimal progress. 2 means moderate progress. 3 means significant progress. Track these scores week over week. Over time, you will see patterns. You will notice which outcomes consistently score low and investigate why. You will notice which weeks produce high scores across all outcomes and replicate what made them work. Average performers have no idea whether they are making real progress. They feel busy. They hope things are moving forward, but they never actually measure. Elite performers know exactly where they stand because they score themselves weekly. The first approach allows drift to continue unnoticed. The second approach catches drift immediately and corrects it. Phase 3 is planning. This takes 10 to 15 minutes and sets up the upcoming week for success. Start by reviewing your calendar for the coming week. What is already scheduled? Are those commitments aligned with your priorities? Or are they obligations you accepted without thinking? Can any meetings be declined, shortened, or delegated? Your calendar should be designed, not just filled. Next, identify your 3 weekly priorities. Based on your 90-day vision and the progress you reviewed, what are the 3 outcomes that would make the biggest difference if accomplished this week? Write these down. They become your North Star for every daily planning session. Now schedule your deep work blocks. Look at your calendar and find the windows where focused work can happen. Block them before other commitments fill the space. Remember to align these blocks with your peak energy hours from the energy management chapter. Finally, identify potential obstacles. What could derail your plans this week? A difficult conversation you have been avoiding? A project deadline that will create pressure? A person who tends to generate urgent requests? By naming obstacles in advance, you can prepare strategies to handle them instead of being surprised when they appear. Here is a specific practice that dramatically improves weekly review effectiveness. Do your review at the same time every week. Most people choose Sunday evening or Friday afternoon. The consistency matters because it becomes automatic. You do not decide whether to do your weekly review. You just do it because it is Sunday at 5 p.m. and that is when weekly reviews happen. The location matters too. Find a place where you will not be interrupted. Not your normal workspace if possible. A coffee shop, a library, a different room in your home. The environmental shift signals to your brain that this is a different type of activity. You are not doing work. You are reviewing work. That distinction helps you achieve the objectivity needed for honest self-assessment. Let me give you the complete weekly review checklist. Print this or save it somewhere you can access every week. Clearing phase. Process all physical items and papers. Process all digital inboxes to 0. Conduct a mental sweep and capture everything. Review phase. Review last week's calendar and evaluate time use. Review task system and note completion patterns. Score progress on each 90-day outcome from 0 to 3. Identify what worked well and what needs adjustment. Planning phase. Review upcoming calendar and optimize commitments. Identify 3 weekly priorities aligned with 90-day vision. Schedule deep work blocks during peak energy hours. Anticipate obstacles and plan responses. That is the entire protocol. 20 to 40 minutes that determine whether the rest of your week is proactive or reactive, whether your systems strengthen or decay, whether your productivity compounds or evaporates. There is one final element I want to leave you with. The meta review. Once per month, extend your weekly review by an additional 30 minutes. In this extended session, review the month as a whole. Look at your 4 weekly scorecards together. What patterns emerge? Are certain outcomes consistently neglected? Are certain days of the week more productive than others? Are your systems working, or have they drifted? This monthly perspective catches things that weekly reviews miss. Slow drifts that happen gradually over weeks. Systemic issues that only become visible at longer timescales. Opportunities for major adjustments rather than minor tweaks. And once per quarter, when you set new 90-day outcomes, do an even deeper review. Evaluate the entire past quarter. What did you accomplish? What did you learn about your working patterns? What will you do differently in the next 90 days? This quarterly rhythm ensures that your goals evolve as you evolve and that your systems mature over time. You now have the complete 12-lever productivity system. Clarity through vision anchors and weekly priorities. Planning through daily top 3 and timeboxing. Focus through deep work protection and environment design. Energy through rhythm mapping and strategic recovery. Leverage through delegation ladders and standard operating procedures. Communication through batching and boundaries. And now, rhythm through weekly reviews and scorecards. These levers work together. Each one makes the others more effective. Skip one, and you create a gap that undermines the whole system. Install all 12, and you create something rare. Sustainable, high-output performance that does not require heroic effort or constant willpower. But knowing the system is not the same as living the system. The gap between knowing and doing is where most productivity advice dies. You have heard ideas before. You have felt inspired before. And then nothing changed. This time can be different, but only if you act. Here is your next step. Not tomorrow. Not next week. Today. Open your calendar and schedule your first weekly review. Pick a time that will work consistently. Block 30 minutes. Protect it like you would protect a meeting with the most important person in your professional life. Because that is exactly what it is. A meeting with the person responsible for your results. You. Then, in that first weekly review, set up your 90-day vision. Identify your outcomes. Establish your scoreboard. Plan your first week with intention. The systems are mapped. The path is clear. The only question remaining is whether you will walk it. You have spent the last several chapters learning what the most productive professionals do differently. Now you know their secrets. They are not secrets of talent or luck or circumstance. They are secrets of system and rhythm and design. Motivation brought you here. Systems will carry you forward. Welcome to the 1%. Now go build something extraordinary. Bonus chapter. The first 7 days. Your quick start blueprint. 1 week from today, you could have a fully functioning productivity system installed in your life. Not theory, not intentions. An actual operating system that runs whether you feel motivated or not. 7 days is all it takes to transform how you work. But here is what separates people who change from people who just learn. The people who change start before they feel ready. They implement while the ideas are fresh. They take imperfect action today instead of waiting for perfect conditions tomorrow. The next 7 days will determine which category you fall into. Most people who listen to books like this feel inspired, maybe even take some notes, and then do absolutely nothing. A week later, they cannot remember the key concepts. A month later, they are searching for another productivity book hoping the next one will finally stick. This cycle never ends because the problem was never information. The problem was implementation. You now have more than enough information. What you need is a systematic path to put it into practice. That is exactly what this bonus chapter provides. A day-by-day blueprint for installing the 12 productivity levers into your life. Each day builds on the previous. By day 7, you will have completed your first weekly review with a real system to review. No more wondering where to start. No more overwhelmed from trying to change everything at once. Just one focused action each day that compounds into complete transformation. Let me walk you through each day. Day 1 is about clarity. This is where everything begins. On your first day, you have one task. Define your 90-day vision. Find 30 minutes of uninterrupted time. This could be early morning, during lunch, or after everyone else has gone to bed. Open a document or take out a notebook. At the top, write the date 90 days from today. Then answer this question. What are the 3 to 5 outcomes that would make these 90 days a massive success? Write outcomes, not activities. Not I will work on my business, but I will launch my new product and generate 20 paying customers. Not I will get healthier, but I will lose 15 pounds and exercise 4 days per week consistently. Not I will be more productive, but I will have a documented system I have followed for 12 consecutive weeks. These outcomes should excite you slightly and scare you slightly. If they do not excite you, they are not meaningful enough. If they do not scare you, they are not ambitious enough. Find the balance where you think this would genuinely change my life, and I am not sure I can do it. That is the sweet spot. Once you have your 3 to 5 outcomes, do one more thing. For each outcome, write what would need to be true at the 60-day mark and the 30-day mark for it to be on track. These become your milestones. They translate a distant goal into nearer checkpoints. Day 1 is complete when you have your 90-day outcomes and your 30 and 60-day milestones documented somewhere you can reference them. Day 2 is about weekly priorities. You now know where you want to be in 90 days. Today you figure out what that means for this week. Look at your milestones. Look at your current situation. Ask yourself what 3 priorities would most move me toward my 90-day outcomes this week. Remember the distinction from earlier in this book. Priorities are not tasks. A task is something you check off. A priority is something that creates meaningful progress. Write down your 3 weekly priorities. Then do something that feels uncomfortable. Look at everything else competing for your attention this week and consciously decide to give it less energy than your 3 priorities. You are not abandoning other responsibilities. You are creating a hierarchy. When conflicts arise, and they will, you know what wins. Day 2 is complete when you have 3 clear priorities for the week written somewhere visible. Put them where you will see them every morning. A sticky note on your monitor. The first line of your daily planner. The lock screen of your phone. Visibility creates focus. Day 3 is about daily planning. Today you install the 5-minute morning practice that will structure every day going forward. When you wake up tomorrow, before you check any messages, you will answer 3 questions. What are my top 3 outcomes for today? When will I work on each outcome? What will I say no to today? But before tomorrow comes, you need to prepare. Today, decide what time you will do your daily planning. Attach it to an existing habit for consistency. Right after you brush your teeth. Right after your first cup of coffee. Right after you sit down at your desk. The trigger matters because it makes the practice automatic. Then set up your calendar with your first deep work block for tomorrow. Look at when you are typically sharpest. For most people, this is within the first few hours of starting work. Block 60 to 90 minutes for focused work on your most important priority. Protect it like a meeting with your most important client. Because it is. Day 3 is complete when you have decided your daily planning trigger time and blocked your first deep work session for tomorrow. Day 4 is about protecting your focus. You scheduled a deep work block yesterday. Today you make sure it actually works. This means setting up your environment before the block begins. Decide where your phone will go during deep work. Not on your desk face down. In another room. In a drawer. Somewhere that requires effort to retrieve. Decide which applications will be open on your computer during deep work. The answer should be only what you need for the task at hand. Everything else closes. Email closes. Slack closes. Browser tabs unrelated to your work close. If you struggle with this, install a website blocker and configure it for your deep work times. Prepare your capture list. This is a piece of paper or a simple note where you will write stray thoughts that arise during focus. The errand you suddenly remember. The email you need to send later. The idea for a different project. Write it down, release it from your mind, and return to your work. The capture list prevents internal interruptions from derailing your session. Today, execute your first real deep work block using all these protections. Notice the difference. Notice how much more you accomplish when your environment supports focus instead of fighting it. Day 4 is complete when you have executed one protected deep work session and experienced what real focus feels like. Day 5 is about communication control. By now you have experienced focused work. You have also probably noticed how much communication pulls you away from it. Today you install boundaries around email and messaging. Decide your communication windows. For most professionals, 3 times per day works well. Mid-morning after your first deep work block. Early afternoon. Late afternoon before you finish work. Write these times down. These are when you process communication. Between these windows, email is closed and notifications are off. Now set up the technical infrastructure to support this decision. Turn off email notifications on your phone and computer. Set your Slack or Teams status to indicate when you will next be available. Configure Do Not Disturb modes for your deep work periods. The goal is to make distraction-free the default and checking messages a conscious choice. Send a message to your key collaborators. Let them know you are trying an experiment to improve your focus and output. Tell them your response windows and how to reach you for genuine emergencies. Most people will respect this. Those who do not will provide valuable information about whether their requests are truly urgent or just habitual. Day 5 is complete when your notification settings support your focus, your communication windows are defined, and you have informed at least one key collaborator about your new availability rhythm. Day 6 is about energy and leverage. You have been working with the system for almost a week now. Today you optimize when you do what and begin thinking about what should not be on your plate at all. Start by reflecting on the past 5 days. When did you feel sharpest? When did focus come easily? When did you feel foggy and slow? You are looking for your personal energy patterns. Most people have 1 or 2 peak periods during the day when cognitive work feels relatively easy. Identify yours. Now look at your calendar for the upcoming week. Are your deep work blocks aligned with your peak energy periods? If not, move them. Are low-value activities like routine emails and administrative tasks happening during your best hours? If so, relocate them to your energy troughs. Your goal is to match task demands to energy availability. Then spend 15 minutes auditing your recurring tasks. Make a list of everything you do regularly. For each item, ask two questions. Does this require my specific expertise or judgment? Is this the highest value use of my time? Anything that answers no to both questions is a candidate for delegation or elimination. You are not going to delegate everything today, but you are going to identify your delegation opportunities. Pick one task that you could hand off to someone else. Document the basic steps required to complete it. This is the beginning of your standard operating procedures. Day 6 is complete when you have mapped your energy peaks, aligned your schedule accordingly, and identified at least one task ready for delegation. Day 7 is about your first weekly review. This is the day that determines whether your system becomes permanent or temporary. Today, you complete your first full weekly review using the protocol from Chapter 10. Set aside 30 to 40 minutes in a quiet place. Work through all three phases. First, clearing. Process any loose papers, notes, or digital inboxes that accumulated this week. Get everything into your system or out of your life. Second, reviewing. Look at your calendar from the past week. Evaluate what worked and what did not. Score your progress on each 90-day outcome from 0 to 3. Be honest. The score is information, not judgment. Third, planning. Set your 3 priorities for the upcoming week. Schedule your deep work blocks. Anticipate your obstacles. This first weekly review will feel clunky. You are learning a new process. That is expected. The second review will be smoother. By the 4th or 5th review, it will feel natural. The key is to do it imperfectly rather than skip it entirely. A mediocre weekly review builds the habit. A skipped weekly review breaks the system. Day 7 is complete when you have finished your first weekly review and set up the upcoming week with clear priorities and protected focus time. Average performers learn about productivity systems and wait for the right moment to implement them. Elite performers implement immediately, knowing that imperfect action beats perfect intention every time. The right moment never arrives. The right moment is created by starting before you feel ready. You have now completed 7 days of systematic installation. You have a 90-day vision with milestones. You have weekly priorities that translate vision into action. You have a daily planning practice that structures every morning. You have deep work protection that makes focus possible. You have communication boundaries that prevent constant interruption. You have energy alignment that matches your schedule to your biology. And you have a weekly review that holds everything together. This is not theory. This is an operating system. It will require maintenance. It will occasionally break down. Some weeks will go smoothly and others will be chaos. But you now have something most professionals never build. A framework for consistent execution that does not depend on motivation, mood, or circumstances. Here is what happens next. Keep running the system. Do your daily planning every morning. Protect your deep work blocks. Process communication in windows. Complete your weekly review every 7 days. After 4 weeks, the practices will start feeling automatic. After 8 weeks, you will not remember how you worked before. After 12 weeks, you will have completed your 90-day sprint and be ready to set new outcomes for the next quarter. The transformation you are about to experience goes beyond productivity metrics. You will notice that your stress levels drop because you are no longer carrying the mental weight of unprocessed tasks and unclear priorities. You will find that your relationships improve because you are present when you are with people instead of mentally reviewing your endless to-do list. Your confidence will grow as you consistently deliver on your commitments, both to others and to yourself. The Sunday night anxiety that used to plague you will fade because you will know exactly what Monday holds. Your reputation at work will shift as colleagues notice that you finish what you start and rarely miss deadlines. You will have energy left at the end of the day because you stopped the exhausting habit of constant context switching. Creative ideas will come more easily because your mind finally has space to think instead of just react. You will sleep better knowing that everything important has been captured, scheduled, and handled. This is not just about getting more done. This is about becoming the person who operates at a fundamentally different level than everyone around them. 1 year from now, you will look back at this moment as the turning point. The day you stopped consuming productivity advice and started living a productive life. The 12 levers are mapped. The first 7 days are planned. The system is ready. Every single person who has ever built something meaningful started exactly where you are standing right now. The only difference between them and those who stayed stuck is that they refused to wait for permission to begin. Now go build something extraordinary.